Rather appropriately for this video topic, we've just released a new pin badge featuring our Norway with shoes graphic, which also means that you can now buy a full Nordic collection. The link's down below, and you can get 10% off by using the code at the end of this video. This year, well, putting aside the whole COVID thing, is shaping up to be a super election year, with countries including Germany, Moldova, Bulgaria, Greenland, the Netherlands, Iceland and Russia all having elections this year. One other country set to head to the polls in the coming weeks is Norway, and let's just say that polling isn't looking rosy for the incumbents, nor for Norway's relationship with the EU. So in this video, we'll take a look at which issues are dominating, why the incumbents are falling behind, and why the closest country to EU membership might be about to reverse course, moving further away from Europe. So let's run through the core issues that will impact Norway's decision, and it wouldn't be an election in 2021 without the issue of the coronavirus coming into play, but not how you might think. Norway has actually had a fairly decent time with the virus. All things considered, the ratio between confirmed deaths and cases stands at just 0.57, putting the country third in Europe, with only the islands of Cyprus and Iceland having lower fatality rates, and other major nations being considerably higher. That being said, case fatality rates aren't the best way of measuring pandemic success, but regardless, the key takeaway is that Norway's handling of the pandemic is, on the face of it, to be commended. The polls themselves show voters agreeing with this assessment. The incumbent Conservatives saw support rally from 19% or so in February 2020 to a peak of 27% a matter of weeks later, with this being the period where the pandemic first took hold and the government took decisive action to squash the spread of the disease. However, it's not all good virus news, because one of the main political issues at play relates to a good old scandal. In April of this year, following a report by Norway's public broadcaster, the Norwegian police launched an investigation and subsequently fined Prime Minister Erna Solberg for breaking COVID-19 rules. Solberg had organised a 60th birthday bash with 13 relatives. However, her own government had brought in a ban on gatherings with more than 10 people. In turn, Solberg was ordered to pay some 20,000 Norwegian crowns, or just under 2,000 euros. This unquestionably hurt Solberg and her party, and the hit is blindingly clear from even the polling figures. Prior to the April incident, the Conservative Party had actually been leading the polls, albeit with an incredibly narrow lead of around 2 or 3%. Since April though, Solberg's Conservatives have been on a steady downward trajectory. A poll conducted by Kantar in early August on behalf of TV2 now puts support for the Conservatives at just 18%, slightly ahead of the Centre Party on 16%, but trailing Labour on 23.5%. While that may not be, on the surface of things, all that bad, the picture worsens considerably for Solberg when looking at coalitions, with the incumbent Conservative coalition likely to be defeated by the centre-left by a 2-to-1 margin, at least according to polling. Projecting polling forward to actual seats in Norway's parliament reveals that the Conservative coalition are set to fall from 88 seats to just 55. On the other hand, the centre-left is expected to boost from 81 to 114 seats, a figure that would give them a significant majority in the 169-seat chamber. And this huge margin cannot simply be explained away by Solberg's birthday issue. Much bigger and arguably more political topics are also at play, not least the issue of climate change. With much of Europe having been ravaged by torrential flooding in recent weeks, it's no surprise that climate change and the future of Norway's energy mix is set to be a defining feature of the election campaign. Norway is Western Europe's biggest petroleum producer, and it's likely to continue to be so. Ahead of our re-election campaign, Solberg insisted that Norway would continue to drill for oil and gas, refusing to heed calls from the International Energy Agency to do the exact opposite and stop. Solberg and the governing Conservative coalition are also facing a broader backlash over unpopular policy and rising economic inequality, with the Labour Party explicitly campaigning on a platform of now being the common people's turn, with tax relief offered to the least well-off, tax hike on the top 20% of earners, as well as an end to privatisation. And if these messages prove popular and a centre-left coalition emerges, it wouldn't mean a simple continuation of the status quo when it comes to Europe-Norway relations. Norway isn't in the EU, but they do have one of the closest third-party relationships with the bloc, thanks in part to them being a member of the Interconnected European Economic Area, or EEA. The EEA gives European Free Trade Area states, that's Iceland, Liechtenstein, Switzerland, and of course Norway, access to the EU's single market, bringing them major advantages like freedom of movement, without them having to sign up to the likes of the Common Agricultural and Common Fisheries Policy. While the current Labour leader and candidate for Prime Minister has consistently stated that the topic of EEA and NATO membership would be untouchable in a coalition, the parliamentary arithmetic, if these polls are to be believed, may twist his arm a bit. Both the socialist left and centre parties are opposed to the current EEA agreement, and together are set to be larger than the Labour Party. The poll we mentioned earlier breaks down further, with Labour getting 44 of the 114 seats in the centre-left coalition, while the socialist left gains 16 and the centre party 32, meaning that the socialist left and centre parties combined will have significant strength in the coalition to begin to undermine the sanctity of the EEA agreement. The Centre Party is pushing especially hard to cut down the membership fees that Norway pays to the EU in order to gain access to the single market, a fee that stood at 2.7 billion euros between 2014 and 2021. Beyond bilateral negotiations, there remains potential for Norway to simply start saying no. Under the terms of the EEA agreement, Norway, through joint committee decisions, is able to decide against implementing EEA directives, although doing so is relatively untested. And given the reaction of the EU to Switzerland's rejection of an institutional framework, it's likely to lead to a material deterioration of relations between the two. Focusing back on domestic issues, part of the broader challenge for Solberg results in the natural political shifts in the Nordic nations, with Solberg being the sole centre-right prime minister in the area, and in the words of the FT, one of the most successful conservative leaders in Europe, behind Germany's outgoing Chancellor Angela Merkel. To add further to complications, a third term for Solberg would be unprecedented for Norway. She's the first ever centre-right leader to end up serving 2 full terms at the helm of Norway, with Norway otherwise long dominated by the centre-left Labour Party. So maybe we are on the brink of history. But what do you think? Has Solberg's success come to an end? Does Solberg have more to give to Europe in the years to come? And crucially, are we about to see Norway distance itself from Europe? Let us know your thoughts on all of these topics and talking points in the comments below. Like I said at the start, we've just added 11 new pins to our collection of high quality enamel pin badges. And that obviously includes Norway, but it's also Antarctica, China, Hong Kong, Iceland, Wales, Northern Ireland, Switzerland, Turkey, Ukraine, and London. You can pick up any of them individually or as part of a full Season 6 collection. Or you can even grab our new United Kingdom and Nordic collections, offering you 5 pins at a discount. Speaking of discounts, you can get 10% off your order by using code Norway. Thanks for your support, and the store is linked down below. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified every time we release a new video. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos like this one possible. And if you want to see your name at the end of videos, then you too can back us on Patreon. The link to that is in the description.